And that was the voice of one Tabitha Brown explaining the realities of what she and other business owners who currently sell products in stores like Target that have made decisions to roll back DEI, the quandary that they find themselves in. I will note for the record at the outset, Tabitha Brown is in a contract. It's a 10-minute clip, and we only played the first 3 minutes for time's sake, but she is in a contract that requires her to sell her products in these stores. And there has been a great discussion about whether or not we should have any sort of boycott effort against Target and other stores that have decided that they are going to roll back DEI. A number of folks have pointed out, well, we had the Montgomery bus boycott and it was very successful. And then let's unpack that. What helped to make it a success? And I was scurrying around in my own brain trying to figure these things out. And then I got a text from my sister friend who is unlike any other, a sister friend I have respected and loved for decades, and somebody who knows some things about some things. And she's someone who, when she calls to say, hey girl, hey sis, hey friend, I got some social justice for us to do, I'm like, all right, tell me where to be. I'm there. I'm with you. This is my intro of the amazing L.Joy Williams, a seasoned political strategist, civic leader, and dynamic speaker with a passion for empowering individuals and communities to engage in the democratic process. She's president of my chapter of the Brooklyn NAACP. She is the first vice president of the New York State NAACP conference, and she is also the host of Sunday Civics, which you can hear every single Sunday on these airwaves. L.Joy Williams, welcome back to the show.
Good morning. Wonderful to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Your article really helped me to settle in some spaces, because your article, which is entitled Boycotts Require More Than a Flyer, I was like, oh, L.Joy Williams, say what you got to say. So I knew we had to get you on for this conversation, which we are dedicating to our efforts to uphold FUBU February, this coming February. So talk to us about your response to that clip with Tabitha Brown and what motivated you to write this article. And then I want to get into unpacking it a bit.
Yeah. So there were two motivations. One is the mere fact of me returning to public writing, because I do still write, but it's writing strategy memos and, like other things like that. But I actually read a post from Lurie, who was talking about sort of taking back control of our content from online platforms. And you and I have talked about this before. Like, we'll do whole pontifications on social media, and I'm like, that could have been an article. That could have been like something, whatever. So I reactivated writing, and as I'm writing, getting back into writing practice, I'm like committing to doing a writing piece a week, whether I publish it or not. Right. And so I put a whole section on my site, and did the civic strategist, and like try to get out my thoughts that don't just have to be in this on Twitter social media form. So that was the first motivation. And then the thing is, you remember from blogging, right, is like, what am I going to write about? Mm-hmm. And I was, on the apps, and I'm seeing people like post in like the Win with Black Women group, and they like it, we need to boycott. And I'm like seeing flyers, not only in that group, but other groups like we boycott. And I'm like, but who called this boycott? And like, what is the and not to say that you have to be an established organization to do it, but what is the strategy behind this? Like, what are the alternate, like all of those kinds of pieces. And everything seemed to be going so fast, at the same time people wanting things to do so quickly. Right. And I was like, I'm going to write about that, because I need people to step away from the Canva templates. And like really, and I say that as somebody who, me and Canva.
Y'all go together.
Me and Canva go together. Okay. But I was like, to strategize about like, how do we collectively do something that has an impact, and I needed that to be known, right? Like even the examples that people were uplifting, which is seemingly people only know Montgomery boycott.
That's the only boycott we ever did. L.Joy Williams, you ain't know?
Don't know about. And again, in like afterwards, I was like, I could have added more pieces on that, right? Like the some of the other local facts, whether it's A&P and Sears, and sort of those big institutions, Woolworth, then there's, if you want to go more modern, right, there is the divestment strategy, the apartheid divestment strategy, right? Like there are all of these examples, but it was a tactic tied to a larger movement and larger strategy.
Now,
Um,
I want to pause you right there because you've used two phrases that I need people to understand: tactic and strategy. These are not
yeah,
the same, right?
no,
Strategy might be, can you give us an example of the difference between a strategy and a
yeah,
tactic? Because this is like organizing 101, folks, and I need us
yeah.
to be mindful of this before we get into the conversation about FUBU February.
Yeah. Well, we rely, and I'm using we collectively, right? Like all of us, we rely heavily on tactics, right? We're going to do a boycott. We're going to do a rally. We're going to do a protest. We are going to do a press conference. We're going to issue a statement. All of those things are tactics, but there's the overall strategy of like, what are we trying? What is our goal?
Mm-hmm.
Who are we trying to move?
Mm-hmm.
What are we trying to move? Who's the decision maker? What are the pressure points? These are all questions you ask to develop what your strategy is.
Right.
Right? So you may be like here in New York, just to give an example, when we were the doing the strategy calls and conversations about establishing the reparations commission,
Right.
right? The goal was to get the legislation passed to establish the commission.
That was the strategy.
Right. So
Right.
then it's who are the decision makers, right? The decision makers, the governor, the speaker, the legislature, right, in order to get the bill passed, and to get it, and then later to get it funded and all of that. And the tactics we used were, press conferences, putting pressure on individual members, particularly those who were, not in support of it or wanted a different version. There was individual calls in meetings. There were press conferences. There was a rally, right? Like these were all of these things that we did, which were tactics for the overall strategy and goal of establishing the commission. And we spent a lot of time on the tactics because they're visual and they're sexy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and you see this what's happening on social. People are like, "Where's the rally? Why isn't nobody storming the White House? What, like
Right.
whatever."
Right.
And there's different strategy and tactics you use for an administration who don't care about your public pronouncements of rally. Like, is Trump really going to care that people are outside rallying in front of the White House?
Right.
No.
So that
So
would be a tactic that is not tied to a strategy that makes logical sense.
and it's
So
not
having a
effective.
boycott just to boycott, that's not like, is the goal of the boycott to get all the blacks who sell their products at a Target to sell it online? Is the strategy or the goal to get Target to re-implement their diversity, equity, inclusion? If that's the goal, is everybody no longer going to Target going to do that? There are questions. There's a relationship between strategy and tactics that has to be understood in order for your tactic to be a worthwhile use of energy, as opposed to just emotional ejaculation that's not tied to any long-term sustainable goal. Am I understanding what you're saying correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
And that requires knowing, I'm using enemy, right? But knowing your enemy. And so
Mm,
um a disruption or a protest over um America, the United States tactics in supporting Israel by doing a rally or disrupting, rallies and things of that nature would work differently, say, on a Biden administration
right.
than it would on a Trump administration,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And like,
So when people say, "How come y'all ain't protesting Trump?" Like, could the way y'all was protesting Harris and Biden about Gaza, is it? Are you saying that perhaps they have made a determination that that tactic of protesting is not going to be is not going to be as effective to go to an RNC rally and try to disrupt that as it might have been to go to a DNC rally?
yes.
Got you. Okay,
Right,
I'm
I
one of
mean,
those
which is
people
all what
who's
we, at least what
shading.
I said,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
during the time, it's like you have to know, like, to me, the tactics you use with a hostile administration that we have now is, the different, right? Not the
Right.
rallies and things. It is going in the courts. It is, doing targeted actions that thwart the
Mm-hmm.
work that they're trying to do. Otherwise, you're just creating busy work. and we don't
Ooh.
have the bandwidth for
Mm.
busy work. And that's really, for those who listen, I love y'all. I love Black people. I do. And I love
Mm.
people who are, I love you. And this is not meant as, to be mean or discouraging or anything like that. I do not have the bandwidth. Activists and folks who do this on a regular basis
Right.
do not have the bandwidth
That's
to
right.
create busy work for you to do. We
Mm.
don't. And we
Even
do
if
not,
it's sexy and pretty busy work.
yeah, we don't have the resources to
Mm.
create busy work for you.
Mm.
Right. And so in the piece, when I'm talking about there are local fights waiting for you, there is ongoing organizing and tactics that are being done and introduced that are waiting for you to get engaged in that.
Wow.
Right. And we do not have the resources or the bandwidth to make you feel good by you going to a rally or
Mm.
organizing a boycott so that you can put on a pin or a hat and you've done something. So you can
Mm.
take the picture and post it on Instagram.
Ooh,
I don't
likes and
have
follows. Likes
I
and
don't
follows.
have the bandwidth and the resources to do that. And particularly those of us who every dollar, just let me just say this as an NAACP president, every single dollar that I, uh, bring into the branch, right? I have to raise. It's not like NAACP National is just like, all
Come
right,
on,
here, you're
sis.
branch president, here's $50,000 for you to do that. No, I have to raise every single dollar in order to do the work that we do.
Right.
Black Brooklyn Agenda this weekend, which I know you will like mention later, because I know you're coming, right? Like we're not making any money on that. It's not
Right.
a fundraiser. It's our
Right.
work that we do.
Right.
It's gonna cost me $5,000 to do because I gotta feed
Mm.
you all. Because you're gonna
Mm.
be here all day.
That's
Right?
right.
Like I gotta get notepads because you ain't gonna bring that. Like people ain't gonna bring whatever to work. Right. So, like
Ooh.
those kinds of things. So, when I'm saying that organizations and activists, we do not have, particularly during this administration and during what is happening now, we are battling things on all fronts. You want us to battle against Trump. Then there's local fights happening. Then there's like we have to continue to maintain infrastructure so that we can. Then we got to
Mm.
do mutual aid for the people who are like, we ain't got the bandwidth and the resources for you to be able to come to something so you can take a picture and post it on your Instagram reels.
Mm.